Good morning, Magic fans, and welcome back to Regional Championship 9 here in sunny, bright Melbourne, Australia at the Coburg Town Hall. There are over 200 fellow travellers ready to take the next step on their organised play journey. I'm so happy to be here to bring it to you. My name is Thomas Anderson, and co-casting with me today will be my standard expert, Kira Turetsky.
Good morning. Welcome to bright, beautiful, cold Melbourne this morning. We have so much on the line today. We are just about to start and sit down for round 2 of RC9. And what are we playing for today, Thomas?
Well, I'm glad you asked because it's such an exciting prize pool at stake here. To start, a cool $15,000 US. So if you're all about the cheddar, there is a stack of cheese available today for the first few spots in the prize list. But I feel like a lot of the players probably care more about the invite to Worlds. Yes, that's right. So the winner of this event, straight to Worlds, direct qualification, also 10 Pro Tour invites on the table. So it's not just winner takes all. There is a lot on offer in here today, and these players are already, right in the thick of it. We've had round 1, obviously some heartbreak and some triumph already, but there's a long road ahead of them. 8 Swiss rounds today at my last count. So we'll be bringing you the next couple of those, and I feel astonishingly privileged because there are some really cool decks in this field, Kira.
There are some really awesome decks. We've even got one sitting down at the feature match table. We have got Bug Otters this morning.
Yeah, not one of the decks I thought of. Like, I was trying to rack my brains. I feel like I'm across all these lists. Have not seen the Otter combo in a while. There's a few spicy combo decks running around. And then, of course, across the table, also something non-standard from the aggro player side. There's a lot of blue-red prowess in the room, unsurprisingly perhaps. But some people are still sticking with tried and true mono-red, or in this case, red-green. Gruul aggro in the hands of Nathaniel Adams will be in our feature match area.
Amazing. So we've got word. We're going to head on down to the table. All right, we're heading on down to the table. All right, we've got Dylan Brown on Bug Otters and Nathaniel Adams on Gruul aggro.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's most cool about today, other than just the players themselves, obviously their individual journeys, we've got a lot of past champions and players with Pro Tour experience even in the field, but we're also following, their journey from the store they qualified here to Coburg Town Hall and then potentially beyond. So, you can see over on the left-hand side there, we've got Dylan Brown representing Penrith's from the deep. That's a journey to make here, so good to start out 1-0, and hopefully all that investment and effort to be here at the RC will be rewarded. Even more impressive then that you're prepared to stake all of that on the Otter combo deck. Do you want to remind me a bit more about this? Because it's been a while since we saw Teamer Otters kind of have a moment in Standard. How did we get to Bug, and why would you bring it to this event over the more common choices?
The interesting thing about Dylan's list as well is that the red in her list is largely in the sideboard. That is a sideboard plan with Song of Totentanz as well as the pivotal cards. And what's interesting about that is choosing to run Sultai at this time. This deck really started as an aggressive deck, and it was leaning on Valley Flood Caller as well as Enduring Vitality to tap and untap.
Yeah, and obviously, as you mentioned, it could be aggressive because you're a creature-based combo deck, but then the combo element, obviously, if the game stalls long enough, you kind of go over the top with if not infinite, a lot of untapped triggers and buffs to your team.
Amazing. Interesting, wonderful start here from Gruul aggro. We've got that Copperline Gorge into Heartfire Hero. We see Dylan's got a Tarnation Vista as well on her side of the board.
Whoa, okay.
Tarnation Vista is going to be able to produce extra colors of mana once she's got multiple colors down. So as soon as she's got a permanent with, say she's got this Storm Chaser's talent and this Otter as well, she's now representing blue and she's got red, so that Tarnation Vista can produce blue and red mana.
Yeah, we've gotten late enough in this current Standard format that the mana is starting to get pretty good for most of these decks. We're seeing very aggressive decks having no problem juggling 2 or even 3 colors, but once you get into blue, black, red, green, that is a bit demanding, and it's cool to see some creativity even in the mana base of this deck, and I guess it hints at the number of reps and the amount of time you've had to put into more of a niche list like this to have the confidence to bring it to the RC. But no matter how confident you are in your combo deck, sometimes you're going to face more of a sort of mathematical test almost from these Heartfire heroes. This card has been so dominant ever since it first appeared in Standard, and it isn't slowing down even in the face of blue-red prowess.
And true to form, we are moving quickly here in game one. We are already starting on turn 3. We've got 2 Heartfire heroes down. Now, interestingly, no pump effects yet, and this is one of those Valiant mice. Third Heartfire hero.
Okay, 3 of a kind. Looks like maybe a winning hand here for Nathaniel Adams. Dylan, obviously, without, as you said, without the pump effects, these mice are still relatively minute, actual to scale mice, but they can get very big very fast, and they don't have to get that big at all, right? With that death trigger in play as well, unless you have very specialized removal, it really cuts down your options for how you can stymie the aggro and try and stabilize against these mice aggro decks. But Beanstalk, a very powerful card in every format coming down here, helping to show that, if there isn't the clock present, if these mice don't start to grow and get some counters on them, then Dylan really is threatening to take over the game at a certain point. It will be sudden and violent.
Well, and interestingly as well, we saw Dylan play that Rakshasa's Bargain, a new card from Tarkir Dragonstorm. And now what's really interesting about Rakshasa's Bargain is that it triggers up the Beanstalk. Now, Dylan, of course, is not going to be paying 6 mana for this spell. She's going to be paying just the 3 colored pip requirements, but still triggers up the Beanstalk to get an extra card while she's also still drawing off of Rakshasa's Bargain.
Yeah, you love to see that kind of thing because, it's almost like a prize for canny deck builders to see, oh, these, 2-ender color mana symbols aren't just there to try and encourage me into Sultai, which, as you mentioned, the deck's kind of made that transition from Temur over 4 cards like this. But the fact that it becomes such a potent card advantage spell with Up the Beanstalk really rewards that kind of deep dive. And now we see another card that's become really prominent in the standard format, really influenced the way the decks are being built, and a great tool against the Heartfire heroes in Nowhere to Run.
Really excellent move here from Dylan to do the Nowhere to Run on one of the Heartfire heroes to give -3/-3. And now what's important about that is when Heartfire hero dies, it deals damage equal to its power, but unfortunately can't deal -2 damage to your opponent.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, like it's such a nice tech piece for this matchup. And I guess it rewards having that card still in your sights, even as, these green decks become a bit less prominent in the ranks of red X aggro, because another one of the green cards in this Gruul list is Snakeskin Veil. That's normally such a beating when you commit mana to a removal spell on these mice, but Nowhere to Run, invalidating ward and hexproof, making it so that you can be a lot more safe in trying to target these mice.
We also have a Screaming Nemesis in the bin as well, and that actually may have been the target of the Nowhere to Run. We're moving so quickly here in this round.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to keep up in the sort of fast start to the day. It's a challenging warm-up on commentary, but as you can see, these players are already locked in. Nathaniel Adams not being slowed down or even really visibly demoralized by the loss of that powerful creature. Another strong death trigger that, again, you're very grateful to have -/- removal for. Again, another form of non-destructive, non-death trigger invoking removal here, potentially in the form of this town in big enough, but possibly also targeting 2 of Dylan's own things. Just seeing Dylan step through, there's a lot of triggers to resolve with a deck like this. There's another card, built seemingly to work with Up the Beanstalk from the jump.
We've got another draw trigger on Up the Beanstalk from casting this town. I saw we've got another Rakshasa's Bargain in hand from Dylan as well. So going to probably sit on that for a little bit longer.
Yeah, so Dylan right now, it feels like actually a pretty good position for all the terrifying 3 mice start. And Nathaniel, there still hasn't really been any appearance from the deck's many pump effects. So those Valiant triggers are not coming through. And as a result, the clock's a bit anemic here. Not that much pressure on the Otters deck as it continues to kind of draw cards and amass resources.
Yes, all right. So we've seen Dylan here has picked up the Stormchaser's talent and the Nowhere to Run. We're going to likely replay. Yep, there it goes. That's the Nowhere to Run. What's the target here?
It could be, perhaps you could go for the creature land there, but I feel like you rather get rid of these mice while they're small. It feels like you can manage finite chunks of damage, creatures that scale linearly. You don't want to let these mice stack up, because even if you aren't thinking about killing them right now, there's going to come a point in the game where you're trying to force through a combo turn. You don't want the red deck to have reach on board in the form of these mice. It's not as dire a situation as some of these builds, like the red-black Leyline deck that I've seen running around in the field that can really burst you, but I guess it shows how good your start is. You're already kind of considering worst case scenarios. How do I lose this from here, and how can I reduce the odds of that happening, even if it seems fringe right now, as we see another core component of the deck come down. You talk about what this enduring creature does for the Otter deck.
So this is Enduring Vitality. Enduring Vitality is so critical to the way that the deck works, because this creature allows your creatures to tap for 1 mana of those creatures' colors. And in combination with Valley Flood Caller, if Dylan's going to be able to find it, I know she's got that Rakshasa's Bargain in hand. We're going to be able to tap and untap our otters pretty much infinitely as long as you've got enough spells to follow the activations of those.
Yeah, so I guess that's the combo part of the deck, but it's really nice for a deck like this, like a cool luxury to have, that your combo piece is also just like this solid 3/3 for 3 that you don't even mind trading per se. Like, you don't care about this body. It is pure bonus value, bit of bauble text, almost bauble stats, and along with those auto tokens that we're being reproduced by just recurring the Stormchaser's talent, you can see how the auto combo deck is actually quite hard to pressure on board. Like, we saw the Omniscience deck on coverage of round 1 if you joined us earlier, and that deck is okay at holding down the board, but it's still a bit reliant on sweepers like Temporary Lockdown, whereas as you can see here, there's a smooth curve from I've got these tokens to chump block, and all of a sudden down come the Valley Flood Callers, and you can see the flurry of game actions being taken. Dylan probably senses she is close to a game on victory here.
She's got the Valley Flood colors down, and now at this point we can just tap and untap our creatures thanks to the Enduring Vitality. And Dylan's now here walking her opponent through how exactly she's going to execute the combo. And largely what's going to happen here is you are just going to boost those otters until you've got massive bodies. We're leveling up the Storm Chaser's talent. What did we grab?
We grab this talent big enough to allow us to reset the talent. That's the one thing, like as with the Omniscience deck, often the only thing that can stop you once you reach this point isn't your opponent. It's if you run out of sort of live cards in hand, draw spells, things that can just keep cast triggers available for you to keep the loop going. But the talent and the this town both reset each other effectively. So once you've demonstrated that loop, both players pick up their cards. They know the score, and it's 1-0 in favor of Dylan Brown. What a showing for the auto combo deck. Not something that people would have expected perhaps to tune against, and maybe that's given her an advantage coming in. We'll see as she goes on throughout the day, but looking already to be halfway to 2-0 here.
Really impressed with the showing from Bug Otters. The question here is, are we going to bring in any red? And I think the answer is no. I don't think there's a need to bring in any of our red cards in this situation. We've executed our combo pretty much to the T. This has gone exactly in Dylan's direction and in her favor. What are we looking to bring in this situation against a deck like Cruel Aggro? Yeah,
well, as you said, it seems like the main red card in the sideboard is one of the signature cards when it was a red deck, Song of Totentans, which gives the deck the ability to, when you're going for that combo, produce a ton of hasty threats to immediately end the game. But it feels like that more wants to come in against a deck with sweepers. We saw there Dylan had no problem establishing a board of creatures ahead of time, and then that allows you to immediately win as soon as the other pieces come together. Here, you're probably just worried about how do I survive until that point. So you're probably looking for any kind of life gain, any kind of removal. Against some of the aggro decks, perhaps a Spell Pierce is available, but against a deck like red-green, this more traditional creature-based aggro, maybe would you bring in Obstinate Baloth? It's clearly more there for the Hopeless Nightmare decks when you can discard it for free, but it does gain life. It is a large body. Maybe that's all you need.
It would be a good card. I think this is not quite the matchup for this. If we were sitting across from something like Orzhov Pixie, Esper Pixie, I think it's a no-brainer. It's basically a free 4/4.
Well, in that case, I mean, unless you want to, and it seems like not their key role in the sideboard, not what you put them there for. But other than Song of Totentans and Obstinate Baloth making different kinds of bodies to block with, it doesn't seem as though Dylan is that concerned about aggro. There's not really anything in this sideboard. You can duress to get, say, a Snakeskin Veil, but then you have nowhere to run. You're kind of pre-boarded against this deck. It just seems like perhaps a rough kind of draw in the matchups for Nathaniel Adams in the Gruul aggro list.
To be honest, I don't think there's anything that I would change about the main deck going into round 2 for Dylan. Interesting. What are we going to do, though, as the Gruul player? What are we going to do in this position?
Yeah, definitely not only because of the game 1 result, but it does seem like Nathaniel Adams is the one who needs to get more juice out of the sideboard here to try and turn this matchup around. The players have exchanged deck lists now. This is an open deck list event, so they're not allowed to check each other's deck lists during the games, but between rounds, they do get that reference to help them guide their sideboarding. So it's not as though anything you conceal in game 1 is going to affect the decisions. Corey Steelcutter is obviously a huge card in the format right now, maybe the card for the day. Would that come in against this kind of deck, or is the trample and potential extra attackers not as valuable as some of the other things you could access?
I think you'd have to be moving so quickly with Corey Steelcutter in a Gruul aggro style deck. Because the bigger question as well, when you're putting cards in from your sideboard, what do you take out from your main deck? What is a card that wasn't helping you overall?
Right, exactly. You don't want to fall into the trap of over-sideboard, thinking, oh, well, they have a card that goes in the graveyard, so maybe I bring in my Ghost Vacuums, and they do have a creature in their combo, so I'll bring in my creature removal, and then suddenly you've just sort of gone below the essential ratios that you need. We saw there the kind of problems the deck can run into, even if you just have a slightly unfortunate draw where the Heartfire heroes didn't really get their money's worth because of the lack of synergistic effects. So you need to be very careful about that if the cards you're sideboarding in don't also double as enablers for those. But perhaps Ghost Vacuum's worth it, considering how important that graveyard loop is. If you prevent the Storm Chaser's talent from recurring, this town ain't big enough there, which you can always do in response to something like Ghost Vacuum. Perhaps Dylan needs to work a bit harder to find the infinite.
All right, well, we've started game 2, and of course, Mountain Enter tapped, Monastery, Swiftspear. Great aggressive start, but Dylan has a swift answer, Grim Bauble.
Yeah, a card that most people are probably familiar with, even if you don't play a lot of Standard, and a card that perhaps you wouldn't be familiar with, even if you've played some Standard. Grim Bauble, relatively recent entry and kind of a fringe card, but really good in a deck like this that loves to be able to get its effects on permanence that you can reset to hand.
Absolutely. Grim Bauble as well, really efficient in the early game before you have a chance to even pump up your creatures. So it's great, it's effective, it's efficient as well, and also something that's really good to bounce against this deck as well. Against Squirrel Aggro, a lot of your creatures are just going to be 1 or 2 toughness. We've got a Questing Druid going on adventure here. We're seeing a Manifold Mouse and a Might of the Meek.
Yeah, and the Manifold Mouse we didn't see in game 1, but it's not every red deck running this mouse setup anymore. There's suddenly been kind of an explosion in different forms of the red deck, but the combo is still very powerful. Anyone who's played against it since Bloomburrow came out understands that, you know, just playing all these mice, not just because they're cute, the synergy is very, very strong. We even got some all-out mice decks at the event today, but just Manifold Mouse by itself can be a whole threat, especially with that Offspring cost. But just the one mouse in play for now, and we can see Questing Druid also present, although right now just on an adventure, waving over there from the Exile Zone. It looks like, even it's funny to be in this position, but the Gruul aggro deck almost falling behind on board as Dylan rapidly develops here.
We've got 2 Thundertrap trainers, so Dylan's had the ability to look off the top of her deck for 2 turns now and refine her hand even more. We saw a Storm Chaser's talent revealed there as well, so she's well on her way to already setting up.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great spot to be in as the Otter deck. So already, you know, for a fringe deck, I suppose it's, again, at that point in Standard where there's such a diversity, it's not that this deck fell off suddenly somehow in power level. It wasn't a hard counter was printed for it, but there are perhaps newer, shinier toys that have distracted people. Not Dylan clearly has a lot of reps on this deck, playing with confidence and with pace and moving aggressively to try and close out this round 2 game in the feature match area. Is this a Thundertrap trainer like getting in to try and trade here or try and set up some sort of Grim Bauble type exchange? What are you hoping for when you block with these creatures?
I'm curious here is, you know, making the decision just to block with 1.
Yeah.
I think this would, to me, indicate that we've potentially got an Enduring Vitality in hand. You want to preserve your ability. This is, you know, when you've got an Enduring Vitality in hand, your creatures are your mana source as well. This also, if I would have done both, this would have been playing around Monstrous Rage, and there it comes down as well. So we've got 2 Might of the Meeks fired off already on that Manifold Mouse, plus a Monstrous Rage. Likely as well, Nathaniel would have chosen Double Strike on this creature rather than Trample with the Monstrous Rage in hand, because the Monstrous Rage token, the Monster Roll token, grants Trample.
Yeah.
So this is a big swing coming in.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Nathaniel.
Part of we're seeing half of the reason, I guess, at least, why red decks are so prominent today. It's maybe 2 of the strongest cards in Standard right now are Corey Steelcutter and Monstrous Rage, and that permanent trample is a huge part of it. But just that play pattern we just saw, even if it's not the exact cards we're seeing in all of the red decks, it's so interesting to see how people have to play on both sides of the matchup when the red decks at any time can just explode in a flurry of combat tricks. And the damage, the variance between the damage it can hit you between like a double striking, non-trampling mouse with no buffs on it and this suddenly huge trampling double striking creature. You can see there, instant speed removal, a fun safety blanket to have when you're on the defensive side of this matchup. But Dylan took a lot of damage from that Manifold Mouse before it went down. That's, I guess, the advantage of front-loading all of the damage into those 1 mana instants. The only question now is how much gas does Nathaniel Adams have left in the tank? Definitely not giving up yet. Can smell the blood in the water. 9 life is not a lot against these sorts of decks. And especially if you can get one of these creatures. Oh, 2 of these. Okay, so this is what we were missing in game 1, right? The synergy between these 2 mice. But immediately that is broken up by nowhere to run.
And the reason Manifold Mouse and Heartfire Hero is such a devastating combo is the ability for the Manifold Mouse to trigger Heartfire Hero's Valiant ability on the turn it comes down. Even though neither creature has haste, you're going to be able to get off that first on the beginning of combat on your turn, target mouse gains Double Strike or Trample. And Dylan is chugging right along, not intimidated in the slightest. We've got another Storm Chaser's talent coming down. That was the one that was revealed off of the Thundertrap trainer earlier, making that 1/1 Otter with prowess.
Yeah. This is, to me, these are both like the good aspect and the fun aspect of playing specifically creature-based combo decks. You can see Dylan has so many decisions to make even before the combo is really in the picture. These creatures are resources that have so many uses. When you're declaring blocks, you're right. Can I afford to use these to spare my life total? Do I need to save these to become mana producers? Do I need these in hand in case I top deck, this town ain't big enough, so I have some value to reset here? But Dylan just expertly navigating these decisions and somehow ending up seemingly very quickly with a dominant board position as another nowhere to run, and now the board is clear, you follow up immediately with that ultra efficient card advantage from out the beanstalk. And if the game's not over yet, you have to fill a Nathaniel's seat now. It's perilously close.
We're really teetering on the edge here. Really efficient plays from Dylan. We had an Analyze the Pollen to go fetch a basic, following up with a Bushwhack to have the Prowess Otter fight the Manifold Mouse, wins in the exchange. We're casting Nathaniel now, casting the Questing Druid from Adventure, followed by a Monastery Swift Spear. So we're going to put a counter on the Questing Druid, trying to build up our defenses here. And it's really not great when Gruul aggro is on the back foot and trying to play defense.
Yeah, and you can see there's some hope here compared to some aggro decks, right? Because we can see now not only the Questing Druid, but also the Ember Heart Challenger, right? You have these weird card advantage engines in creature form, can also get a bit big, can also threaten some burst damage, but you have to imagine this is probably the last flurry from Nathaniel. So presenting those creatures unable to get a good attack off this turn, going to need to rely on triggering the Valiant from the Challenger. And you can see, yeah, almost immediately that's the threat that needs to be dealt with, because that is the source of worst case scenario for Dylan. So she's so on top of what could get her deck out of this winning position and just effortlessly controlling game two, it seems.
She's in such a dominant position. And you wouldn't think, given the life totals currently, we've got Dylan on 9, Nathaniel on 19. You'd think that Dylan would be the one having to play defensively, but you look at the difference in board state between these two. Nathaniel going ahead to choose and activate the Restless Ridgeline and animating it into a creature, and we're going to start swinging.
Yeah, this is what we mean when, Magic players say life is a resource, only the final point matters. Dylan, you can sense from the start of the game, even blocking with the one Thunder Trap Trainer and not two, seemingly knows exactly how much life she can afford to concede to opponents and still have a safe buffer, right? Because at 9 life, yeah, it's not great. Monstrous Rage, really good at ruining people's calculations, but it doesn't seem like a situation, even from Nathaniel's seat, if you're hoping for the best, where that's likely to get you over the line. You need a couple of hot draws in a row and kind of hope to the Dylan's draws are maybe dead lands or something else. But as we saw earlier, there's Analyze the Pollen and Bushwhack in this deck. The deck is built to minimize the number of times you can draw a blank.
All right, here, and we've got the Rakshasa's Bargain being fired off here. And we've got a draw trigger from up the beanstalk, plus we get to look at cards on the top of our library off of the Rakshasa's Bargain. So Dylan has a chance to really refine her hand here. We did see an Enduring Curiosity, but that's been put in the bin.
Yeah, I suppose at this point, the emphasis is still on controlling the board. I suppose you feel as though as long as you aren't dying and as long as you're constantly chewing through Nathaniel's remaining resources, like the fewer creatures are on board, the less damage any top-decked instance or combat tricks represent. And once you feel completely safe, you can assemble the combo at your leisure if Nathaniel doesn't just choose to concede. But Nathaniel clearly not ready to concede yet, and rightly so. Fight it out until the end here. Going to trigger, the creatures in play, buff Questing Druid a little bit, try and fight it out with this Prowess up Otter. I just don't see 9 damage surprising Dylan from this spot. Like, the resources are not there to create the uncertainty you would need to sneak through a winning line right now.
We've got Dylan down to 1, and sorry, that's an Enduring Vitality in the graveyard, not an Enduring Curiosity.
So the other enduring creature you're likely to see at this event, but yes, the green one for now, at least there.
Dylan confidently down to 1 in this position.
Yeah.
Her hand has to be so good.
And that's the open deck list scenario, right? Like, you would not probably dare to drop to 1 against a red deck if you did not already see the list and go, okay, there's no shock, there's no burst lightning, there's no lightning strike. The only way I get got here is if I accidentally eat a Heartfire trigger or let through some trample damage. But that is still somewhat real. Like, this Questing Druid's sizable. I mean, still, Nathaniel probably knows how many cards Dylan saw off that Rakshasa's, so you have to suspect that's a calculated drop to 1 life.
All right, we've got a full-out swing from Nathaniel here.
Asking
Dylan
the
with
question.
only 1 blocker as well.
Ah, surprise.
It's an otter. Surprise.
There was more than one blocker. I might have meant to go down to one on purpose. Still, like, again, you're not out of the woods. This is still a match. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves in proclaiming these otters victorious. But as you can see, Dylan just playing with the air of someone who is not threatened right now, even on one life. And you can see now the untapped triggers coming through, but without the enduring creature in play here, this doesn't represent mana, so you can only get so many of these triggers, right? We're still kind of fishing for resources.
Well, what we've done here is we've done an analyze the pollen with collect evidence. So this is now Jillian being able to tutor a card directly that she wants. And we can see that she's grabbed another Thundertrap trainer. So likely what she's going to try and do, we're going to set up for better blocks, because the most important thing here is we can't die.
Yeah, exactly. The priorities, at least, are very easy to tell right here. We talked before about having to juggle between, do I preserve my life total? Do I try and, preserve combo pieces for later? Right now, you don't have that choice. You cannot drop below one life. This deck is not running any real solution to that. And so all these cute plays do have to end up soaking whatever damage is available. But Nathaniel, does Nathaniel even have cards in hand at this point? I think one on the table there, it looks like. Not a lot, to be fair. So you're fairly confident as long as you block these up with sufficient toughness, maybe account for a little bit of extra trampling damage potentially with the trick from hand, then you're still okay. And so Dylan...
But look at this, she's cleaned up the board.
Exactly, survives unfazed. Everything seems so calculated right now. Like, not saying that anyone in this room is unprepared, but... Okay.
Duress a mountain in hand. That is not good for Nathaniel. That's not where he wants to
be.
We've got a Thundertrap off the top, so we're going to, again, be able to find a piece necessary. We've got another Rakshasa's Bargain, and Dylan is well on her way.
Exactly. The Thundertrap trainers just keep coming down. This deck does not really run out of resources. So as long as you are not losing that one life, and again, as you said, when you duress, it doesn't matter that you missed, quote unquote, by like revealing a mountain. You're just happy to see nothing, right, for Nathaniel, because now you really limit the number of scenarios that can happen. Although Questing Druid, this is how you create some uncertainty. Off the top, we're going to see another couple of cards. Now, Dylan doesn't know what Nathaniel could be having, but again, in this position, there's multiple tough blockers in play. You need haste, you need trample. There's a lot that has to happen here.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to quest again off of the Questing Druid. We're going to seek the beast again to see two more cards. Not what we want to see off of here, unfortunately. Yeah. We do have that creature land. We've got one more Restless Ridgeline, but Dylan, again, already well set up with her blockers.
At least you can say that Dylan does not have the combo. Like, it is not at least visibly threatened in the next turn or so. So those Questing Druids that are on exile are probably going to get to, return from their adventure, and we see one now immediately coming back into play. These are far from the worst cards you could have to play right now. They're just a bit slow.
Oh, well, Dylan's off the top of that second Rakshasa's Bargain. She's got the Enduring Vitality, and that, if she's got the Valley Flood Collar as well, is going to probably spell game, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even there's this town, there's the talent. So all of the pieces you saw in game one that led to a swift closing of the game in Dylan's favor coming together now. Dylan not making too much of a show of, I've got this, but once these cards start to come down, I'm sure Nathaniel is aware how close this must be, because even if you haven't seen the combo pieces yet, you know how deep into your opponent's deck they have seen with all of these bargains and these beanstalk triggers. And you have to know your time is, you're kind of past your time limit as the red-green deck here. You're just playing because you're not dead yet, but...
Interesting here from Dylan as well. So obviously we've gone from 6 mana to effectively 8 on that turn, but choosing to pass and leave up potentially another Rakshasa's Bargain. There's likely another This Town Ain't Big Enough in the hand as well to start getting that loop going.
I mean, as we saw before, right, even if it looks like you might be dead to an attack, you're not. There's so many instances, and even the creatures in this deck, like the Valley Flood Caller has Flash. So even if you had the combo, you're under no pressure to play that out. You can always wait and then get even more surety that you won't die to some unexpected crazy line, see exactly what's coming at you, and then with full information make the right decision. And again, just another upside of how this deck's built with all these powerful instance and information granting spells.
All right.
Ooh. Okay.
So Nathaniel here, that would have been a Manifold Mouse off the top, which is really important here. Just, again, building up an ability to block against now, because now Dylan, again, remains the aggressor.
Yeah. Exactly, and you have to, again, as we said, Nathaniel probably not at all disillusioned or have any illusions of being able to play this out with infinite turns. You have to know the combos on the way. And so in the worst case scenario where you're blocking some very large otters all of a sudden, it is reassuring to have all of these bodies on the field. But still, that doesn't really seem like you can consider it a winning line in most situations if you're trading your whole board to not die to infinite mana this turn.
I'm so impressed with Dylan managing to stay so calm and collected on one life. This interesting as well in Nathaniel's list, because Nathaniel not playing, there's 4 copies of Burst Lightning. And that could spell disaster for Dylan at the last second if Nathaniel is able to rip that off the top.
Yeah, it's one of those things earlier where I spoke probably ahead of myself by watching Dylan go to 1. I went, well, there must not be a Burst Lightning in the list. And I didn't see it before when I was glancing over the sideboard. So, there's probably no direct burn. But not only are you playing around those death triggers in the mouse and also Screaming Nemesis, but yeah, there is just straight up a chance you could die to any top deck. So obviously Dylan either calculating the odds there or just playing with unbridled confidence and feeling as though she has the ability to react to whatever comes off the top as long as you have mana and cards available. And to be fair, the match so far has borne that out. Like, this Otter deck has been in complete control of the game, and all of the times that Dylan has tanked life loss has felt like it's a very calculated attempt to use that resource and preserve bodies in play. For a situation like this right now, we have now assembled most of the combo, just looking now for a way to continue the loop, right? Or at least to pick up another Flood Caller out of the yard.
The other thing that this says to me that Dylan might be holding is she may have a negate in hand as well for that Burst Lightning. Having to play around and making sure that no matter what, we don't want to die to a Burst Lightning ripped off the top, especially because we know that Nathaniel's at a point where we're just top decking.
Yeah, I said unbridled confidence before, but not like baseless confidence. You don't just want to be, nah, I'm too good. My opponent would simply not draw their 4 copies of Burst Lightning. Unless you feel... Maybe if it's someone you play against at your local store all the time, if both these players were from Penrith and you think, oh, I know that Nathaniel sides out Burst Lightning every time for some reason. But, in general, you'd like to think that the answer's available in hand. And certainly there has to be something in Dylan's hand, right? Because she's keeping sort of a tight grip on those cards there. But there's a lot of resources available for a player who still has not yet quite managed to close this game 2 out.
Nathaniel as well, forcing Dylan into an uncomfortable position, having to make some blocks. But the best thing about blocking with an enduring vitality is that it comes back because it endures.
Exactly. It's very demoralizing as a player trying to get aggressive against this deck or the Enduring Curiosity deck to know that even if you trade for these key pieces and they're strong effects with pretty sizable bodies on them, like they get by the vanilla test okay, and then they're not at all vanilla, and that you still arguably have to deal with a harder to remove version of the permanent afterwards. That might be one of the last pieces we were looking for. This town ain't big enough for both of these players. This main stage certainly only has space for one winner, and Dylan really wants to make sure it's her picking up the Storm Chasers talent that's going to represent more blockers, and more importantly, it's going to represent another ability to re-level up that enchantment and pick up more resources out of the graveyard, which obviously can be this town itself, but can also be those tutors we saw earlier. So if you were missing the Valley Flood Cooler, suddenly that becomes very easy to access.
Skillfully as well, choosing to pick up the Grim Bauble to take care of that Manifold Mouse. And again, as long as Nathaniel's board is clear, Dylan's in a relatively safe position to play to her win.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel like we've been making it seem like Dylan is really dragging this out and toying with her food because the position looked so strong for the Otter deck from early on. But admittedly, when you are willing to drop to 1 life like this, you do that with the knowledge that you are going to have to play as safe as possible the rest of the game. You would not like to go to a game 3 and roll the dice that this Gruul deck has some crazy aggro draw and just runs you off the table. So make sure that everything is completely accounted for, completely clear Nathaniel's board, and then at your leisure end the game.
Nathaniel as well, 2 cards in hand. Corey Steelcutter. So we did board a Corey Steelcutter into this match. Do you think that's the right call?
I understand the temptation to do it because there's a lot of tokens on the other side, right? We're seeing Dylan like kind of effortlessly loop these talents, and it's not the main reason you play the card, but you're generating a lot of these Otter tokens. So being able to trample in for damage is huge. Being able to potentially even equip to a mouse isn't the worst way to spend your mana if you need to trigger that Valiant. It does trigger off abilities that target, such as equip. But you're right, in this sort of situation, it just seems too late in the day for this Steelcutter to make any difference. And even if you're trying to play around removal, right? Like the thing that this card does well is grind. You're not out grinding a deck with this much card advantage, and Dylan is able to win in the late game, as you'd expect. 2-0, an astonishingly powerful show of force for this Otter deck.
Really incredible work from Dylan here. This deck really impressed me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen previous incarnations of the deck, especially the Teamer deck, and I respected the combo and the fact that it has a lot of blockers, so it can just hang around in a match, even where you don't get the ideal draw. But it seems like there's very few bad cards in the deck now. The fact that you can move the Song of Totentanz to the sideboard, which was one of the more marginal cards, and instead you're playing something like Rakshas's Bug, which, as you said, is just rock solid, especially with Up the Beanstalk in play. The deck looks to have crazy legs.
I will say I'm pleasantly surprised to see Up the Beanstalk in this Otter deck. I think it's a card that sees very narrow play. You know, you often see this in going to be your classic domain deck. You're going to see this in some of those green-black graveyard decks, but seeing it in an Otter combo deck as well, really interesting, and pushing, again, that card advantage, that ability to dig through the deck and grab those pieces that you really need.
Yeah, so a clean 2-0 victory to Dylan Brown on that Otter deck. Perhaps someone we'll be seeing later on in our broadcast or even tomorrow on finals day. But as we mentioned before, there's a huge amount at stake here for these players. 15,000 US in prizes, and of course, that invite to Worlds. It'll be what a way to win that with the Valley Flood Caller and really putting your money where your heart is, I guess, if that's your pet deck of choice. Good luck to Dylan the rest of the day.
Really well done. Really amazing close to the game as well. We saw that Corey Steelcutter come down, and that's just not what you want to see. Your opponent on one life, you're hoping it's a burst lightning off the top each and every time.
Maybe the only time in today and tomorrow that we'll say that about Corey Steelcutter. That's the wrong top deck. That card having a massive impact on the format right now. But as you can see, it is not infallible, and there are plenty of ways to get around it, or indeed, if you can't beat it, to join it and get that card over the top. I'm sure that in the ensuing rounds, we'll see a lot of blue-red prowess making perhaps better use of the artifact. But it's great to see the diversity in the field before we maybe enter into those grueling mirror matches.
Well, best of luck to both of these players. Dylan Brown going 2-0 into round 3. Amazing work from one life, seemingly from behind, and absolutely just dominated that last match.
Exactly, and to Nathaniel, hopefully not the demoralizing loss that leads to a downward spiral, but the early obstacle that you overcome. Both of these players may end up facing each other again later on.
We are so early into this. We are moving into round 3, and out of 8. We've got a long way to go. This is just the beginning. There is so much more to come.
So if you just joined us and I only caught the last 2 turns of that match, that Otter deck looked great. Don't worry, here in Coburg in Melbourne for the Regional Championship 9, we have so much more Magic to play. We hope you'll stay with us in round 3 and beyond.